Hello, I'm Kent Myers.
I'm Mick Cornett, and it's time for the verdict. As a part of its traditional and continuing commitment to public and community service, Crowe and Dunleavy Law Firm presents The Verdict, an objective discussion of contemporary legal issues hosted by Kent Myers. And also brought to you by a friend of Oklahoma Lawyers for Children and Delta Dental Plan of Oklahoma. And welcome to The Verdict. I'm Mick Cornett. This week's show deals with the highly controversial topic of legalizing drugs. And let me introduce one of Oklahoma's top legal experts, my co-host, Kent Myers. Kent, I think a lot of people will see this and say, what?
Yeah, that's, or wow, what have they just run out of subjects and they had to make one up? No, we haven't, and this isn't just made up. This is being talked about widely in England now. Just back from England recently, and some of the major political figures in England are talking about legalizing drugs. The governor of New Mexico a year or two ago ran on a platform of legalizing drugs and got elected. What progress they're making out there, I don't know. But it is not just a frivolous subject. It's a subject about which there is significant debate because George Bush, #1, President George Bush, started the war on drugs, and there are a lot of people that are saying the war on drugs has been an absolute failure. And if we are not stopping drugs through the war on drugs, and we are putting people in prison because of drug use and possession and sale, and we're not making any dent in the problem, what should we be doing? That's the topic we've got today. We've got two fascinating and energized guests that we had last week, Mike McCarville and John Coyle, to debate this issue. So I think it should be a very interesting topic. I want to bring up one other thing. Don't forget about prohibition. What we're talking about right now is, should drugs be prohibited? This country is full of history about prohibiting things like alcoholic beverages. And what can we learn from the prohibition experience that we had a long time ago?
Good point. It's an interesting topic, the legalization of drugs, which are currently illegal. How would it affect our society? It should be a lively discussion, and it'll take place right here on The Verdict.
I enrich our cultural landscape.
I help define our quality of life.
I am one of 4,000 artists in central Oklahoma who receive
support from Allied Arts, this community's united arts organization.
I am an Allied artist.
It's got to be around here somewhere.
Don't worry, we'll find it. Just calm down.
I swear it was right here on the desk.
All right, if I were a will, where would I be?
It's the only copy. Without it, we're out $3 million.
I know.
Hey, accidents happen. If a condom breaks
Or you have unprotected sex.
You have 72 hours to reduce
your risk of getting pregnant. It's called emergency contraception.
Got questions?
Call Planned Parenthood.
All children deserve a life of hope and love. But sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all of the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. Oklahoma Lawyers for Children has over 350 of the best attorneys and volunteers in Oklahoma County who donate their time and services to represent children. For more information, call 405-23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
And And welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and we're ready to discuss the idea of legalizing drugs which are currently illegal. And Kent, we're talking about heroin, crack, really across the board.
Yeah, meth, that's been the subject of a lot of recent articles in the Oklahoman about the methamphetamine problem in Oklahoma and generally. What we're really talking about, and I don't know whether it takes us down any particular road or not, but what we're really talking about is prohibition. And we've got two wonderful guests I'd like to introduce. Two guests that are return guests. On my right is John Coyle. John has the distinction of being the only guest on The Verdict that is now coming on for his third appearance. John, we're really glad to have you back again.
I enjoy it.
John is a very distinguished lawyer in Oklahoma City doing both criminal and civil law. He is an OCU undergraduate and law graduate, an Oklahoma City native. He's well known, well respected, and a friend of mine for a long time. It's really a pleasure. We also have, once again, a return guest, Mike McCarville. Mike is the host of the very well thought of KTOK Open Mic Live show that's on daily during the week. Mike has a long distinguished career as a journalist, and this is giving his listeners a chance to see him and to listen to him, putting a face behind that voice. Mike has done a lot of distinguished things in his career, not the least of which is authoring 12 books. Now, how you had time to do all that with all the other things you do, I don't know, but we're really glad to have you back, Mike.
My pleasure to be here. I'm trying to catch up with Mr. Coyle 3 times.
Yep, well, you're on his trail.
I am.
Like a lot of other people I might add. Let's talk about prohibition. Prohibition of alcoholic beverages was something that this country struggled with for a long time in the early part of the 90s, and ultimately repealed prohibition when they found it wouldn't work. We now have a war on drugs, or a prohibition, if you will, on drugs. And there is substantial disagreement, I think, on whether that's been effective or not. I want to pull up a graphic now about prohibition. Abraham Lincoln said that a prohibition law strikes a blow at the very principles upon which our government was founded. Prohibition goes beyond the bounds of reason in that it attempts to control a man's appetite by legislation and makes a crime out of things that are not crimes. Mike, if we are keeping illegal drugs that are now illegal by making them illegal out of the hands of man, generically, are we doing something wrong? Would Abe Lincoln be critical of this?
We've done so many things wrong in the so-called war on drugs, and John and I, your viewers are probably going to be a little bit shocked, as you co-host will, at how probably close to agreement we might be on this issue. We've done so many things wrong in the war on drugs, and you posed the question. I'll attempt to answer it. Are we losing the war on drugs? Is there any question in anyone's mind that we're losing the war on drugs? We're spending more and more money. We're using government agents everywhere you can think of, and yet the drug problem continues to grow. It's like Topsy. It's everywhere. And you mentioned methamphetamine. The meth labs are popping up, as we all know, like mushrooms, after a heavy rain in Kentucky, for crying out loud. They're everywhere. And they're a danger not only by what they produce, they're a danger to police officers, they're a danger to firefighters, they're certainly a danger to the neighborhoods where they're located. Are we losing the war on drugs? I think we are losing the war on drugs. Prohibition, the repeal of prohibition did one thing that I think if we repealed all of the drug laws against possession anyway, we probably would do the same thing that the repeal of prohibition accomplished, and that was we'd put a lot of organized crime figures out of business. Now, what the end result would be, I think, is anybody's guess. But this is one of those issues, I think, that even conservatives, when you get around a table and you sit and you say, yes, here's what we're trying to do, we've got to control these drugs, what we're trying to do, one of my favorite topics, we're trying to legislate personal behavior. Far too often, it doesn't work. Most cases, it does not work.
John, what do you think?
Well, at the heart of all this, I think, is one of the most important things in America, and that is personal freedom. and responsibility to take care of that freedom, to use it in a way that's right and proper and doesn't infringe on the rights of other citizens. The war on drugs, when it started, was an admirable idea because drug use was expanding. And so 20 years ago, it was a good idea in some ways. What it has become now, it has turned from a law enforcement opportunity into the law enforcement employment program. The war on drugs is the second biggest industry in our country behind General Motors. More people are employed in this country in the war on drugs than anything else in government.
Is it a failure?
It's a failure. Drugs are cheaper and more available on the streets of America than they were over 20 years ago. And today we spend $25 billion a year of tax dollars, things that could improve all the schools, things that could really do things for kids who don't have an advantage, because education is the biggest problem in our country. And until we legalize drugs, there's going to be a profit in it. And they'll be sold, not controlled, and we'll spend billions of dollars locking people up for no good reason.
3 years ago, John, the DEA, these are the latest figures available, 1998, Americans spent $66 billion on cocaine, heroin, meth, marijuana, and other illegal drugs. If we were to decriminalize or legalize drug use, do you think that expenditure would go down or go up?
Oh, I think the expenditure, I think it would go down dramatically, because first of all, the price would not be as high. We could also put a tax on it and use that tax to educate people and to really educate them, to have real drug treatment opportunities. You know, I practice criminal defense law, and I represent people who are accused of drug crimes, and some of them go to prison. And there's no real treatment program in the prisons in Oklahoma for people that are addicted to drugs, and that's ridiculous. We spend $25,000 a year to send them to prison, and then when they get out, we haven't educated them on how to do better. It's a failure. All they want to do is hire more police. They want to hire more drug dogs, more drug agents, more judges, prosecutors, but at the same time, they don't want to try to spend any money educating people about it. It's a big industry, and make no mistake about it, it's probably the most powerful lobby in our country today who wants to keep drugs illegal. It's not people who are harmed by them, it's people who are making money off of the backs of people who are locked up because they're caught using them or selling them.
Well, I think, John, you
Hold this thought, Mike. We got to take a break. We'll come back and we'll start with you when we return. This is The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers. We're discussing the legalization of drugs. What's your verdict?
Yeah, campfire's a lot of fun. You get to make some friends. You get to do some cool stuff. Campfire's for boys too, not just girls. But hey, campfire's definitely for kids. So call the campfire office nearest you to join in on the fun. 'Cause let's face it, you're not getting any younger.
St. Gregorys University has been changing the lives of people like me for 125 years. Affordable, private Catholic education, balanced with dedication to community and service, makes St. Gregorys special. We're extremely proud of our students' outstanding academic achievements and our nationally ranked athletic teams. It's when you help a student build a future of balance, integrity, and service that you change a life forever. St. Gregorys, a community for life.
Yesterday was plain awful.
You can say that again. On Broadway is Oklahoma's premier youth musical theater company.
Bringing our daughter here was one of the smartest things we've ever done.
I've learned a lot. I've gained a lot of confidence. They helped me develop talents I never knew I had.
And it's fun.
On Broadway, Oklahoma's premier youth musical theater company. Now enrolling in Edmond. Call 330-CAST. That's 330-2278.
Every day, in state governments throughout the country, crucial decisions are being made that affect the lives of children and their families. But as this process takes place, children are often left voiceless. When these children raise their hands to be heard, is anyone listening? There are people listening. They are child advocates. Join us and raise your hand for kids.
We're discussing the idea of the legalization of drugs and the possible repercussions of such a legalization. Kent, this has been a fairly lively discussion so far. Where to from here?
Well, we unfairly, but by necessity, interrupted Mike. He had a response to the point John had just made before the break, and Mike, let me throw it to you.
I can't remember. No, never mind. No, what I was going to say, John's point is well taken, but look, I don't think any of us are going to sit here today and argue that we are in favor of the illicit use of drugs. But the bottom line is that we have helped create an industry in the nation and around the world because of all the international implications of drug supply. I mean, we've got, there are people in this country and outside this country who have more money than we can even imagine, all because of the laws that have been enacted in this country and in other countries trying to stop it. And again, it is this philosophical question of can you legislate personal responsibility and personal behavior? And as a conservative, if you say, well, no, you can't legislate personal responsibility and personal behavior, then how much behind laws against drug use do you get? And particularly in light of the fact, John, and I know we agree on this one point at least, we're not winning this war.
No,
this
we're
war
not,
is
we're not
eating
winning
us
the war
alive
at all.
as a nation.
And to say that you are in favor of legalizing drugs doesn't mean at all that you're in favor of taking drugs, that you want someone to take drugs. And the people who make money from drugs in America today are not the pushers, are not drug pushers, because for the most part, they're low level, oftentimes they're addicts. The people that make money off of drugs in America are the people that build prisons, the people who manage private prisons, the people that are involved in all aspects of the criminal justice system, who sell the cars, the drug dogs, the other things. Those are the people who are the real drug czars in America today. Make no mistake about it. And one of the things that really troubles me the most is that 15% of the drug users in this country are African American, and 70% of the people locked up, according to the Justice Department statistics, for violating drug laws are African American. Not only are the laws sucking out all our tax dollars, they're locking up some of the African American, some of the weakest politically of our citizens.
Is it disproportionately, is it disproportionately strong against the poorest of our society?
No question about it.
Well, let me pull up a graphic from a very staunch conservative, William F. Buckley, Jr. Now, Mr. Buckley says, I leave it at this, that it is outrageous to live in a society whose laws tolerate sending young people to life in prison because they grew or distributed a dozen ounces of marijuana.
Well, Kent, that pretty well summarizes, if you will, the dilemma, John, that conservatives face. Mr. Buckley, obviously a pretty well-known conservative. Some say he's to the right of Attila the Hun, and I must be to the right of them in the overall. But he does make the point, and he makes it very well. This is this philosophical dilemma, and I keep coming back to that because to me it's core to this whole argument. Do we continue to make drug use and drug possession a punishable offense in this country? And what the answer is, I don't know. But I think we have got to begin a pretty thorough examination of what we're doing to ourselves as a nation through these drug laws.
There's some suggestion has been made that we could handle the legalization of drugs, if you will, much as prohibition was repealed. Prohibition was repealed by a strong constitutional amendment that gave enormous power to the state to control its alcoholic beverages. And some states control their alcoholic beverages much more liberally than others. That is one possible solution, and I would suggest that if that happened, probably Oklahoma would be very rigorous in its enforcement, and maybe other states like California, Massachusetts may not be. What do you think about that, John?
Oh, I think it's a great idea to leave it up to the states. And then if it was legalized in Oklahoma and legalized in other states, we would have school systems second to none in all the world. We would be able to feed children who don't have food at their home. It would completely change the way that America lives today.
John, do you think it would reduce the incidence of drug-induced or drug-related crime on the streets?
Well, there's no doubt about that. It would reduce not only the drug crime, it would completely take the gangsters out of them, and it'd be harder for kids to get.
Much as the repeal of Prohibition did.
If a kid gets drugs, it's because someone sells it to them because they can make a profit from them. And there's more violence associated with alcohol than all the drugs combined. You know, 350,000 people a year die from nicotine deaths. 7,000 people a year die from drug overdoses. What ought to be against the law? If we're going to help people and we're going to make things against the law, then it's hard to choose. You can't choose, but we've got the wrong thing, locking too many people up, Mike.
Let's go to a final 45 seconds from each of our guests. Mike, why don't you start us off?
To me, basic philosophical question, do we continue to try to legislate, if you will, Mick, excuse me, personal responsibility, personal behavior? Excuse me. To me, the war on drugs, it clearly is taking us down a road. I mean, I see no victory in sight. I don't see it coming, don't think it's ever going to happen. I think we ought to re-examine the whole effort, the whole war on drugs, and see if we can't fix it or do away with it.
John?
I agree with everything that Mike says.
This is scary, John.
I know, and I don't see any way. And I've been helping people in trouble for 28 years, and I've seen it get worse and worse and worse, and there is no end in sight to it. It will continue like it is today because the profit in it is large. Most of the people who get started in it are in a low socioeconomic strata. They need the money. Take the money out of it, take the profit out of it, tax it for sale, and have real schools that help people. Have free education all the way through college at the very best for every citizen, and quit trying to fill the pockets of people who build prisons.
And it's going to have to start on the federal level, you would assume.
It has to start, and it seems to me, with particularly the legalization first of marijuana. Millions of people go to jail, have bad records for no real good reason.
It'd clean up the prison overcrowding, wouldn't it?
It would save probably $50 billion a year.
Gentlemen, thank both of you for coming on.
Thanks to you.
All right. Kent and I'll be right back with a final word. This is The Verdict.
Hello, my name is Ted Smith. I'm president of the board of directors of the Oklahoma Disability Law Center. ODLC provides free legal services in civil matters to people with physical and mental disabilities.
I'm Mike Sykes, Vice President of ODLC. For more information, call 1-800-880-7755.
The Oklahoma Disability Law Center provides high-quality legal services to people with physical and mental disabilities.
In Oklahoma, there are more than 1,600 children waiting to be adopted. They're of all ages, and for many, home has been a source of pain and conflict. They've dreamed of finding a better life and a loving family. Consider adoption. For more information, call 1-877-OK-SWIFT or visit the website www.okdhs.org. Adopt. It may be the toughest job you'll ever love.
Boy Scouts of America.
where above all else, character counts.
Bringing out the best in each student. That is the simple goal and tradition of Heritage Hall. The focus on the individual shapes the educational experience at Heritage Hall. Each student benefits from small classes, able, dedicated teachers, a solid academic curriculum, and exceptional co-curricular programs of athletics, arts, community service, and other activities, parental involvement, personalized counseling, and the development of responsibility, integrity, and love of learning. If you want education taught with pride, then you want Heritage Hall.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Well, we knew this topic would raise some discussion, and in between breaks, you and I are continuing the discussion. This is one that you could discuss for a long, long time, the legalization of drugs.
All I can say is, wow, I'm worn out. This was a difficult topic because people generally admit the war on drugs is not working. Some stop short of calling it a failure, but it's simply not being effective to do what it's designed to do. And our investment in prisons, putting people away for drug-related offenses gets higher and higher. Recently I saw in the Daily Oklahoman a story about the Corrections Department needing another $63 million over the 30-some-odd million they'd gotten in additional funds just for this year. $100 million in additional funding. And why? Because we've got way too many people to house, to deal with in our prisons. You take away those that are in there for drug-related offenses. I'm not talking about driving under the influence; those would go to jail anyway. But buying and selling offenses, it would have a dramatic effect. What would it do to addiction? What would it do to consumption? What would it do to the price of drugs? What would it do to rehabilitation programs? The list of questions is endless. The list of answers is very short.
And where would organized crime head next? Because you assume it's not going to do the elimination of organized crime, at least completely.
No, they'll find a niche somewhere. Don't know where it will be. Just like water, it will go to its lowest level and then dribble out somewhere. But I think we have to look at first things first, and I'm really interested in what the viewers think about legalization of drugs.
Just a few seconds left. The website?
The website. Please let us know on www.theverdict.tv. Please check out our website and let us know what you think about legalization of drugs or not. And I want to take just a final second to thank one of our very great sponsors, Delta Dental of Oklahoma. John Gladden, Dr. McCarville, and Enid, the chairman of the board, and all of their fine representatives. We're really pleased to carry your banner. And we just are very appreciative of their support.
And we appreciate you for watching. We'll see you next week on The Verdict.
This program was brought to you by Crowe & Dunlevy, a professional corporation. And also brought to you by a friend of Oklahoma Lawyers for Children and Delta Dental Plan of Oklahoma.